So we're going to be talking about accessory dwelling units and other multi-generational living options. I'm going to turn it over to attorney Kathleen Summers. And Kathleen, take it away.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Today, we're going to talk about, as Carol said, the multi-generational living, including the new law here in Massachusetts regarding accessory dwelling units. So as we start, I just want to kind of give a little background regarding multi-generational living and how really it has become kind of a thing these days. People looking, as you all know, the cost of housing in this area, being able to potentially find a way for whether you're looking to have your adult parents be closer to you for many reasons, for care provision, for both maybe young children as well as for your parents themselves, for sharing of cost, or whether you are on the older side and looking to find, again, a way to be able to have additional help if necessary, to make sure you can afford to continue to live where you are, to help your children out or help a loved one out. So many different reasons for thinking about multi-generational living. And it really does affect everyone, from young adults to, those who are older individuals and looking to, again, find some solutions regarding living options. So, again, a lot of reasons why we're seeing an increase in this interest in multi-generational living, raising children, the expense of daycare and the potential of being able to have loved ones nearby who are able to help with that aspect of it. Again, maybe caring for an elderly loved one or you yourself as you're aging, looking to make sure that you've got the ability to be cared for, at least to have support as you age. We certainly have a longer life expectancy, and so issues of housing and how we keep ourselves safe and have our needs met continue to be a concern. People who might be in a single parenthood situation and needing extra support for raising children. There can be social reasons for having more people around you, whether that, and we'll talk about in the accessory dwelling unit options, whether that be someone who's in the house or whether that be a structure on your property that you are able to have another individual or individuals living in. And certainly financial reasons to help make sure that you're sharing costs where you can, to be able to make sure that housing is affordable for all. So there can be a lot of benefits to multi-generational living. So let's start with those. There have been more adult children living at home, and having this ability to come into a multi-generational arrangement can take away the stigma of an adult child coming back home again. Again, giving the assistance of caregiving, whether that be, grandparents or older individuals for younger parents and younger children, or whether that be the opposite for the ability for adult children to help support their aging parents. It really can help to strengthen bonds between families. It is a wonderful opportunity to, I know my own family, for my children to have known their grandparents as they were growing up, to be close to them. Absolutely a fantastic way of being able to strengthen those bonds between the generations. And certainly from a financial standpoint, these arrangements can be very beneficial to all, helping to pay off student loan debt, helping to stretch a retirement nest egg that might be there, sharing the expenses of being able to run a household. Again, we talked about how expensive it is around here. You all know, for young people these days to consider buying a property. And for those of us who might be aging and looking to sell our properties, the idea of where do we go next, that can be a really daunting thought as to how do we replace what we have, or at least be able to find something that's reasonably priced for us now to move into. So multi-generational living can really have some incredible benefits for all. But as we're going to talk about, there's also some downsides that you have to consider. As we all know, nothing is roses, and we do have to prepare for and really should think about what happens if there is an issue or issues that arise throughout this, and how can we help to address them ahead of time as much as possible to make it so that all sides really come out, with value, whether, value of having a loved one live with you and the value of maybe keeping independence, and everyone being on the same page with what expectations are. So that's one of the big things, is the failure to clarify expectations. If you are, a young adult with a growing family, and your thought is, gee, I'm going to have my parents come in, live with us, put an in-law apartment on our house. That means I can be here to help watch them in case there's any concerns as they are aging, and they can be here to help us. But clarifying the expectations, are you expecting your parents to take care of your children throughout the workday? Are you expecting from a parent standpoint that your child's going to be on call for you every time you need something? How are you going to handle financial arrangements? Who's going to pay for what? Everything from when you begin to put together this multi-generational housing situation. Let's say you have not been fortunate enough to find a property that already has an in-law apartment, and you're looking to maybe add something like that on. Who's going to bear the burden of that? Who is going to pay for the building of the in-law apartment? How are you going to handle, again, property taxes, utilities, insurance issues? So being very clear, sitting down and having honest and frank conversations about what each individual coming, each kind of side to this is expecting out of this arrangement. And really making sure that you work through as much as you can those issues ahead of time is going to help to make this arrangement successful. And where possible, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but putting these things down in writing is really critical, so that everyone can be reminded of, again, what expectations were set, what the agreement is. You're also going to have to potentially do this multiple times. I mean, how we go into an arrangement to begin with may have to be modified over time. Let's say, the expectation was that mom and dad were going to provide care for the kids 3 days a week. And that just doesn't pan out for many reasons. Maybe it's too much on mom and dad. Maybe it ends up not being what they really had thought it was going to be. Maybe health-wise, things change for them and they're unable to. So, it's just one example, but you're going to have to revisit these expectations on a regular basis to, again, make sure that everybody is on the same page and in agreement with what the expectations are. We also want to be really careful about unfair or unbalanced financial burden. You're an older individual who says, I'm going to have my adult child and family move in. Again, expectation is they'll be there to be able to help me out, maybe get me to doctor's appointments or help me to, get groceries and meals and all the rest of it. But my child is not necessarily paying to be there. Is that part of what the agreement was? Are they giving services in lieu of, let's say, rent? Or did you actually want them as well to pay rent? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? What do we mean by rent? Or are maybe they picking up a certain amount of the expenses? Again, clarity around all of this is really critical. And also remember, sometimes these financial arrangements can also cause issues among the extended family. You have multiple children and one of them is living with you, and you are feeling like this child, let's say, is providing a certain level of care to you. And so maybe you're paying them for their services, or maybe you're giving them a break in terms of the cost of living. And what does that do with the other children? Not that you have to have them approve everything, but having frank conversations with the family as a whole as to how these arrangements may be affecting not only the individuals involved, but the extended family and the relationships among them. One of the big things we always have to worry about is caregiver burnout. And again, whether that's you're the, quote unquote grandparent taking care of your grandchildren, or whether you're an adult child helping to take care of your aging parents, caregiver burnout's a real thing. And making sure, again, that you have touch points where you talk about how things are going, what the concerns are for everybody, what the challenges are with being a caregiver. Caregiver, particularly when it starts to get into being, 24/7, multiple hours every day of the week, that really can be an issue for an individual to be able to fulfill that successfully. They are going to become oftentimes as ill, if not iller, than the person they're caring for if we're not careful. So making sure that you talk about what caregiving means and what happens if you have a situation in which someone's burning out. What's the backup plan? And how is that going to get implemented? And what kind of support could be there for the caregiver to help them so that they're able to continue to be successful in that role? We have the failure to launch situation in which, maybe the arrangement was that an adult child could live with the parent, but that was never expected to be an open-ended situation, but it becomes an open-ended situation. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure, again, that you're able to have frank conversations about what the expectations are for how long this child might be living there, what their cost structure is to do so, and what happens when you say, you know what, we're done and we want out? And that happens frequently. Again, a situation that we might set up today. I think of oftentimes, again, adult children bringing their aging parents in, and the aging parents get to a point where they're no longer, let's say, safe to live in that property. What do you do in that situation? Well, what happens if the adult children now get to a point where they say, you know what, we want to move on. We want to make a change in our own lives. Maybe jobs force a change. Maybe life itself forces a change as, children grow up and leave the nest. And now the adult children are saying we're looking ourselves to what next steps look like. How do you successfully end this relationship without destroying the family? And what that's all about, again, is setting expectations, making sure things are in writing, and making sure that you revisit that as needed to be able to talk through what other options might be there. Loss of privacy is a huge one as well. You may again think about, boy, it would be wonderful to have an in-law apartment on my children's house, but how do you maintain boundaries so that, it isn't something where the children's lives are completely open to you, unless, of course, they want them to be, or your life, being able to have your own private time in your own private space, your ability to be able to kind of retreat to your own corner when you want to have some ability for have solitude. And then the issue of too many opinions. And that's where sometimes you get, again, other family members who may not be immediately involved in the living situation, butting in, giving their thoughts, making sure that, that they have their wishes for what's happening here heard and aired. Now, certainly you can have those conversations and again, should think about the larger family and how things are affecting them. But at some point, they don't have a say and shouldn't have a say in terms of what the agreement is between the immediate parties to this multi-generational situation. Their ideas certainly can be part of the conversation, but, they may not be able to or should not necessarily be able to insert themselves into a relationship that they're not directly involved in. So really thinking about what happens when the situation, we go in with the best of intentions about what's happening with a multi-generational living situation. And so many times they can offer such richness to our lives, to the lives of our loved ones, to have, let's say, children and grandchildren, in the same living area. It really can be an incredibly wonderful experience. But thinking about what happens if it doesn't work out, what happens if there is a need for a change, whether that be, again, someone becomes ill, someone loses a job or needs to take a job somewhere else. There has to be a reason to get out of this situation, or you just want to get out of the situation. How do you, for a lack of a better word, divorce in these situations and still maintain the relationship with the family? So some of the things to think about before you move in and get into a multi-generational situation is really, first of all, carefully assessing the feasibility of this relationship. What's the health status of everybody? What are the needs of each of the parties? What's the financial ability of each of the parties? And how, again, can you set expectations with each other about how this agreement is going to work? Be very clear about the financial arrangements. You know, money does funny things to people, and it can be the root of destruction for relationships. So you really want to make sure that you lay out who's responsible for what. Are you splitting costs? Is one party going to be, let's say, carrying the burden of putting on the in-law apartment into the house? But let's say the parents go ahead and foot the bill for adding the in-law apartment or making the improvements to the house to give them a place to be able to live. And now increasing potentially the value of the child's house because they may or may not have ownership interest. The parent may not have ownership interest in this house. So what happens again if there is a decision to dissolve this relationship, dissolve this arrangement? How do you make the parties whole? So thinking about all of that ahead of time and setting out the financial expectations and arrangements and putting that in writing is critical. Making sure you outline household duties. Who's going to be responsible for what? You know, the classic that, you know, son-in-law is the one who's always got to handle the garbage and getting everything out of the, you know, and handling the property and the cleanup of the outside, and becomes extremely, you know, I guess, resentful of the expectations. You don't want that to happen. Or you have a child who becomes resentful of having to care for their aging loved one in a way that they never had envisioned when this all started. So outlining those household duties, and again, revisiting these relationships as often as possible as things change for everyone. The care expectations, as I just touched on, are absolutely critical. As we age, you know, things change. Our ability to be able to do things for ourselves may change, driving to doctor's appointments, handling our own financial affairs, possibly having physical limitations that require more support. How are those going to be dealt with? Is it the expectation that the child or the, you know, the adult individual living with you is going to manage those? Or do you have another way of bringing in extra services? How are those going to be paid for? Excuse me. And understanding those boundary lines. Again, this goes a lot to privacy, you know, butting into family situations that may be the nuclear family of the child, and parents getting involved in situations maybe they shouldn't be, or vice versa. The child getting involved in the parent's affairs in ways that the parent is not appreciative of, and those outside individuals and their attempts sometimes to control what might be happening in this situation. So memorializing this living plan in a contract, looking at all these different things and putting it down in writing is absolutely critical. And thinking about what happens if this arrangement no longer is working. How do people get out? How do they get out and be financially made whole, or at least partially made whole, so that they too can move on to a next step? Some of the legal issues that we have to think about when we are setting up these kind of multi-generational situations. Again, I talked a little bit about, let's say you're putting a home improvement onto the home to make sure that there's a living space for your loved one. You're putting something like an in-law apartment on. Who's going to pay for all of that? How are you going to deal with ownership issues? Are the individuals going to own the property together? Is there going to be some kind of an agreement that they will be reimbursed for all or a part of their expenses should the house be sold in the future? If the house's value is increased, how does that get divided among the individuals here? So thinking about all of that. And again, coming up with an agreement ahead of time as to how you're going to deal with that. We have to always worry in our world about long-term care planning. This is where someone is, again, aging and eventually might need something like nursing home care. Well, we have to be careful if if a parent gives a child, let's say, a gift and to help them pay for something like the building of an in-law apartment on their house, and that is characterized as a gift, that could affect that adult or that aging parent's future ability to get something like Medicaid or mass health assistance for long-term care needs. So speaking with a seasoned individual attorney who might really be able to help guide you all of the consequences of things like gifting money and being able to set up the arrangements for the improvements on the house or the building of an apartment or the building of the accessory dwelling unit that we'll talk about. We want to make sure that's done properly from the beginning so that we are taking into account the potential effects on future long-term care needs and the ability to get mass health benefits. Thinking about if you've got multiple children, let's say, and there is, again, money's used to be able to help, either improve a property or put an in-law apartment on a house for one child, but you have, again, multiple children. Is there a concern about, let's say, equalizing off potential inheritance? Maybe the in-law apartment that you put on the child's home has really increased the value of that property. Maybe that's something now that's going to cause some kind of disparity between what's happening with that child and the other children. Now, that might be perfectly fine. You may say, you know what, this child is allowing us to live here. We're entering into this arrangement with them. Yes, they may end up with more value than the others, and we're perfectly fine with that. Or you may say, no, we're going to find a way to maybe give other value to our other children or to other loved ones so that we're equalizing off any potential inheritance in the future. So see, these are some of the things you really want to think about because it can have a huge impact after the death of the elder in this situation and on the family relationship between the children and who's getting what. And then I talked a lot about that exit strategy, but I can't really, focus on it enough. You really do need to think about what happens if things either don't work out or there's an agreement that it's time to move on. We've had situations in which someone has spent monies on something like an in-law apartment on a home. And, 20 years down the road, they thought this was going to be where they are, forever. 15, 20 years down the road, there's a decision by, let's say, the adult children that they really want out. They are the ones who own the home. Let's say they've got the full control, so they can decide if they want to sell it. And unless you have some kind of legal arrangement in place, the senior in this particular circumstance may end up with nothing. And you may have a situation in which the child has all of the control around deciding when the property is sold and for what value. And they may not have any obligation to the individuals, their parents or loved ones, who may have put money into the property in order to build this in-law apartment or home improvement situation. So thinking about that exit strategy, having agreements in place around how things like sale decisions are going to happen, who's going to benefit by what kind of value when the sale happens, is critical, again, to think about from the beginning. So I touched on a little bit on the mass health part, but let me talk a little bit more about that because it really is a concern when we have older individuals who are moving in with, let's say, younger generation or even together to have to think about. And so you always want to look at what's the age of the people and their current health status. And what's the likelihood of them maybe needing something like nursing home placement in the next 5 years? Because it's really that 5-year look back that we always have to be concerned about when there's any kind of gifting being done. And so doing that analysis to see where everybody's at and what needs may be there is critical. And some things to think about is opposed to gifting money to, let's say somebody is actually paying for the construction, the cost of this improvement to the home, or the in-law apartment is a great way to do it because again, what the Mass Health rules look at is they say that any kind of gifting away of your money could be a disqualifying event in which you might then not be eligible for Mass Health if you've done that within 5 years of applying for benefit. But if you can use your money for your benefit in any way you need to. So if you are using your money to actually put on the in-law apartment, and it can be shown that this is a place that you are going to live and enjoy, that then might be something, a way for us to get around that disqualifying event of gifting. But maybe a one-time gift to the individuals is the better way to go. Actually gifting money to the child in this case and saying, you know, do what you need to do because we believe we have enough time. Our health is fairly good. We don't see nursing home as being something within the next 5 years. And so a one-time gift, allowing the child then to use that money as they choose to, need to, in order to be able to make the improvements or put on the in-law apartment. We also could look for some kind of an ownership agreement between the parties. This is where the parents would actually become owners of the property. Now that can have its own complications because you can own a property and become eligible for Mass Health, but there is the potential that they could lien that property for any benefit that they might pay on your behalf. And so we really want to look at ownership and whether that is the best way to go in this situation. So other times we consider lease agreements. Maybe that is a lease agreement that's not just your typical landlord-tenant kind of lease agreement, but ones that might also say that the older individual, the senior, the parent in this situation, has the ability to use and enjoy the property for the remainder of their life, as long as they're safe to do so. And that way it does make it so the child is still the owner of the property, but they don't have the ability to kick out the parent without some kind of cause. And so protecting the parent from being able to stay in the property so that in case there's some kind of disruption in the relationship, they're not on the street because the child has decided they're selling the property. It makes it so they don't have ownership, but they may have some use and occupancy ability to stay in the property. So again, thinking about what's the best arrangement for us based on the age, let's say, of the parents in this particular example, their health status, what their needs are, what their potential wishes are and desires with respect to the living situation. And then for the children who may be the owners of the property and looking to have their parents come in as, as an in-law situation. Do we maintain ownership with them? How do we make sure that we're protecting all parties where we can? So just some practical things to think about when you're deciding, if you've decided, let's go forward with a generational living situation, is you want to look at the design of the house. Can you make changes to an existing property in terms of being able to make a change within the bounds of the property? Let's say, you convert a room to something, you put a bathroom on the first floor, laundry on the first floor, that kind of thing. Do you need to add to the property, and can you do so with that existing property, given, let's say, the restrictions or, what the town allows? And how do you set that up? What's the best way to ensure that all the parties have privacy, that you've looked at accessibility issues? Again, bathroom near a living space near a bedroom so that somebody has the ability, even with that bathroom, to access it should they need a wheelchair or a walker, grab bars, all of those kinds of things to think about when you're either doing a home improvement or adding on. And for certainly as, the aging individual in this scenario, you want to make sure that you can age in place, that it is conducive to one floor living. So you're not having to deal with stairs, etc. Both stairs within the property, as well as, let's say, access stairs to the property. So really doing a good assessment of the property itself and what can be done, what should be done to make sure that you've got privacy taken care of, accessibility, and that there is successful ability to age in place on that property. And then when you have multiple children involved, how do you deal with caregiver stress for the one child, let's say, who might have the parent living with them? How do you potentially come up with an agreement with the other children, let's say, to either take turns providing care, to financially add to the ability to, let's say, pay caregivers if necessary? Really looking at that. How do you make sure that if monies are given to one child or monies are used to improve one child's home, how do you work out maybe equalizing things off with the other children? Or do you say, no, this child, I am living with this child. Part of this is that they're providing me with a level of care and service. And that's why they're getting a little bit more, is because they're helping to maintain a home for me and to make sure that I have a safe place to live. Those family tensions can become very real and very big very quickly. And so addressing those ahead of time is critical to make sure that you maintain those family relationships as much as possible. And communicating with people. Again, this is not something that's a one and done, that you enter into an agreement and that's it. You have to continually communicate to make sure things are working. Do you need to adjust expectations, adjust legal agreements to, again, reflect what might be happening with the family as you move forward with this kind of arrangement and as you're actually living in a multi-generational situation? And after I've given you all this information, I want you to still remember this can be a wonderful, wonderful arrangement for families. It can be a fantastic time for families to spend time together, for people to be able to share community with each other. And so as much as we need to think about all of the potential downsides, challenges, potholes that may come with this, it also can be a win-win, a real value for both or all of the people involved when done correctly. So let's talk specifically about this ancillary dwelling unit situation. So this was actually under the Affordable Homes Act that was signed by Governor Healy back on August 6th of last year. And what it did is it, again, given the housing crisis here in Massachusetts, it was looking to provide a way to increase housing opportunities. And so the accessory dwelling unit is intended to be an addition in a single family residency. So, we're zoned different ways in our towns. There are single family residents, multifamily residents, business, those types of things. There are multi-use properties. And so if you're in a place where it is a single family, adding on to that single family home, adding on an in-law apartment or putting some kind of a dwelling on the property itself could be a real challenge, because you oftentimes had to go to zoning, get things changed, have your neighbors agree, all of those kinds of things. So this Affordable Homes Act did a couple of things. It is encouraging people to make changes to their homes under certain conditions without having to go to zoning to get approval. So there's a couple of different types of ancillary dwelling units that it really envisions. One is within the residence itself, and that would be turning an aspect of the existing home into some kind of an apartment. Let's say that's a basement, redoing a basement, making it an apartment now. There are, of course, requirements around all of this, but being able to turn an existing aspect of the home into an ancillary dwelling unit. The other thing it envisioned is the potential for new construction, whether that be an addition to the property, some kind of an attached structure, or even the ability to have a detached structure on the property and still maintain the single family zoning of the property, but allow for this ancillary dwelling unit to be put in place. So just a quick overview of the rules. The ancillary dwelling unit can't be more than 1/2 of the square footage of the main house or 900 square feet, whichever is less. So the greatest space that an ancillary dwelling unit can take is 900 square feet. It needs to have its own entrance. So if you're making some kind of an improvement to the basement, let's say, of a property, you have to make sure it has a safe entry area and not just through the main house itself. It needs to, it applies again to all single family zoning districts, and you don't need to get any kind of special permission from the zoning board. Some other things that the Affordable Homes Act does is there is actually some a program that can be used to generate monies under this loan program to help make these kinds of improvements or alterations either to the home or in building the ancillary dwelling unit if it's a freestanding structure. It also isn't limited to just a family member. So building an ADU is for individuals with disabilities, or excuse me, can be for really anybody. I mean, you can actually build an ADU and use it as a way of generating rental income in your property. Now that can have its own downsides, but certainly it is something that can be used. So if it doesn't just have to be for a multi-generational situation, but that's one of the uses that they really had envisioned. And this home modification loan program is really when you're looking to build an ADU or make a change to a home under the ADU for an individual with disabilities or for a person over the age of 60. And so again, if you're looking to bring an aging elder into your home, a loved one, your parents, anything like that, you can potentially utilize the home modification loan program, as well as utilizing it for a loved one who may have disabilities. There's a 0 interest deferred payment loan. That's what the home modification loan program is. And it's for modifications to bathrooms and kitchens, the installation of ramps, stair lifts, platform lifts, those types of things, sensory or therapy spaces, hardwired alarm systems, fences, and the accessory dwelling unit themselves. So it is a really interesting program, one that we're starting to see people utilize more in a way to bring this generational living option to their family. And it can, again, work out really, really well. It can be a wonderful way in this kind of crazy real estate world that we're in right now, to be able to help not only, let's say, a younger generation to buy a home, but to allow older generation either to stay in their home or to be able to come into their child's home or another loved one's home for assistance and help as they age. But you need to go into these situations with eyes wide open. Make sure you talk about many of the different things, including how you're going to deal with any kind of disagreements between you, what the expectations are between you regarding care situations, who's going to be responsible for what from a household duties standpoint, from a financial standpoint, how utilizing monies, let's say, to put improvements into a home are going to be done, who's going to be responsible for that. And in situations in which you might have multiple beneficiaries, multiple children, how do you, either equalize things off between people, or, again, do you make the decision purposefully that that's not how you're going to do it, and the child you're living with may end up with greater benefit? And then how do you maintain family relationships in these circumstances? And again, it's not a one and done situation. It's something that you want to have a regular way of reviewing to make sure that the arrangements are working for everyone. And if they're not, what adjustments can be made to make them successful. And if ultimately they aren't successful, or for many different reasons, the arrangement needs to be dissolved, how do you do that? And again, try to make the parties as whole as possible and try to preserve those relationships as you move forward.
All right, that does it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
have
Take
a great
care.
afternoon. Take care.